a warm welcome to another Sharing Your Passion. Today I have a very special guest, very special in the sense that she is a returning guest, having already shared her passion around 12 months or so ago. I've invited Keidi Keating back to join me, partly because when we first met and she first shared her passion here, she was partway through a project called The Light. You may remember reading or hearing about it, or hopefully also seeing the previous interview. And at that stage, the core of the project, which is a book by the same title, also The Light, was in its, you might say, embryonic stage, or getting to the point of publication. So it hadn't yet been published. Now it has been published. It came out in January. January, that's right, Keidi. And so I've invited Keidi back. Keidi, thanks very much for joining me again. Just really excited to hear about what's been going on since, and because, you know, such a wonderful project, and then for the book to be published. How does it feel? It's
a relief to finally have it out there after 2 years of putting it together. And yeah, just watching now the reviews coming in and people commenting on how they've found it, what lessons they've learned from it. It's wonderful, yes. Wonderful, fantastic. So what sort of feedback have you had, more specifically? A lot of people are saying that it's kind of one of those books that they're picking up and dipping in and out of. It's not so much that they're sitting there reading it cover to cover. And so whenever they feel in need of a bit of inspiration, people are picking it up. And a lot of people are saying that it's interesting when they've had certain kinds of days that whatever lesson or whatever piece of information they've really needed to hear, they just happen to open it up on that piece. So that's really nice that that's happening to people. And some people also have been, you know, using it kind of the exercises, you know, for that purpose, to sort of using it on a daily basis. And a few people who I didn't really think would, you know, understand the book or really get it have also been using it to, and, you know, using it to change their life and transform things for them. So that's fantastic. For people maybe who didn't see the first interview, and I hope I'm wrong in saying haven't actually heard of you or The Light, can you just give us a little, for their benefit, give us a little overview of what the book is about and why you know it's been such a big project for you? Yeah, well, it's 22 different contributors have each gifted a chapter to it, and it's looking at different aspects of the light and how we can reawaken our own inner light and take that into the world with whatever we do, so that we shine and be a beacon for others to then also do the same thing. And it's taken such a long time because, of course, with 22 contributors, that's you know, a big project, and it involved lots of editing, lots of phone calls and emails. And the idea of the book, the main goal is to raise money for 7 different charities. So 100% of the net profit of each book sale is going to the 7 charities that we've chosen. And we want to raise $1 million. That's the mission. Fantastic. So that's it in a nutshell, really. And I mean, I kind of just, you know, was guided to do this project in a very spiritual way after I kind of had very intense healing sessions. And it was about wanting to find my purpose in life and what I was here to do. And that's when the idea for the book came to me. So it's all very guided, yeah. So The Light has become and is your purpose? Is that what you're saying? The book well, it's itself? Definitely a purpose for now. Yeah, I don't know whether it's my life purpose or whether it's just a purpose to get me into the next purpose. But definitely for now, I see that my purpose moving forward is to spread loving and light through books and products. Beautiful. As well, maybe. Beautiful, yeah. It reminds me of Eckhart Tolle. He has a very sort of interesting take on life purpose. I mean, we've all been told at some stage through spiritual teachers about having a life purpose, and a couple of your contributors mention it as well, don't they? Yes. And I find it interesting, his take on it is that your life purpose is what you're doing in the moment. Yes. That's a nice way, I think, of looking at it, so there's no pressure or stress. Yeah. Anyway, enough of that. Changes. What about... Exactly. What have been the... tell us about the challenges
that this has come. I mean, tell us about some of the challenges that the project has thrown up for you.
Well, I think the biggest challenge for me since the book has actually come out is just really surrendering and trusting that everything is going exactly how it's supposed to go. And there's been a few days where I felt, you know, we haven't sold as many as I wanted this week, or I haven't had as the feedback I might have wanted for a few days. And then something magically happens after that. So instead of kind of feeling angst and anxious and frustrated at that time, to just learn to sort of let go of those feelings and just, surrender really, and know that everything is going to work out. So I think that that's probably the main challenge that I faced. And the other one is just to learn not to have to keep doing all the time, and that sometimes the doing isn't really the answer, and it's like to just let the light work on its own, you know, because it's like the things that have come up so far, which perhaps have been the bigger things, have really happened just in the flow. You know, it might have been an interview I've had with somebody, and then that person knows somebody really famous, and they're saying, oh, well, we can send a book to that person for you to get it in front of them. And that person who I wanted to have a book had been on my list of people to want to have a book, you know, since the very beginning. So there's amazing things like that starting to happen. But that's just not me doing it. It's, you know, it's just allowing the universe to do, or the light to do what it wants to do, rather than me, you know, to realise it's not me doing any of it really. It's something higher.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's definitely been a challenge, just to accept that. Yeah.
It's interesting. I remember Neil Donald Walsh, and he's actually one of the contributors, isn't he, to your book, Keidi. His excellent chapter is, I think, at the end or near the end of the book. And I remember hearing or reading somewhere him saying that whenever he had problems, he would go back and read his own book. Is that something you might contemplate?
Actually, yeah, definitely. Sometimes, you know, I don't have, because I'm so busy with like all the emails that come in and all that, I don't really have time to read it right now. But now and again, I do think, oh, I really should go back cover to cover and read the whole thing, and not just read it, but apply it, you know, properly to my own life as well. Because I couldn't get too caught up in the doingness to not have time for the other important things.
Maybe that's the biggest challenge.
Finding the time. Definitely.
So in practical terms, you say that you've been monitoring the sales and obviously keeping an eye on how things are going. There are a number of very good reviews on Amazon, for example.
You did one too.
I did one too. I mean, I didn't say that just because I've done one, but I meant the other people, not me. But tell us about how the book has been, you know, selling and how it's been received. I mean, maybe give us a little summary of the sort of reviews and feedback that you've had.
Yeah, well, it's been selling very well. On Amazon, we're actually trying to sort of steer people away from buying on Amazon, only because the idea is to raise as much money as we can for the charities. And on Amazon, I think they take something like a 55% commission, which is fairly high. And so a lot of people also are just coming to our own website to purchase it directly from us. And we have a printer and a fulfillment house based in the UK, and we've got one in the US as well. So the books are just automatically then shipped from the fulfillment centre.
Right.
So either way, I mean, a lot of people are using Amazon just because they know and trust Amazon, of course, which is fine as well. It's just for us and the charity point of view, we don't raise so much like that. But we have sold, and the Kindle book's also selling very well, you know, because we do have it on Kindle. And I mean, we're sort of like, you know, teetering just below 2,000 copies so far that we've sold, which is, you know, fair amount really. I think I read somewhere that 90% of books, like all books that come out, only don't even make 500 copies because there's so many people now bringing books out. So really, we've, you know, surpassed that even in a few months. So I would like to try and sell like 100,000 by the end of the year, which might sound really unrealistic, but you know, you don't know what can happen from day to day, and just somebody might just put in a massive order or something.
Anything's possible. Who knows? Maybe someone listening to this interview.
Maybe you want 100,000 books.
Has there been, have you noticed any, or have you, the sort of feedback that you've received, has there been any difference from let's say, the States to, because a lot of the contributors are American, aren't they?
Yes,
is it about roughly half and half? I can't remember.
No, I think there's actually more from the US.
Okay.
There's more contributors based in the US. But the feedback across both countries has been very similar, actually.
Okay.
I think it's probably a little bit more readily accepted in the US because the Americans are more open to that subject of spirituality, and especially the light. There's like a lot of sort of interfaith areas of America, and yeah, but in general, I mean, even in the UK, people are really kind of enjoying it and getting it. And I know it's definitely spreading, the light, and light workers in general are the people who are a bit more interested. So
I think it's one of those books, if I may say so, and this is neither good nor bad in a sense. I think it's just my experience, but with many books, certainly in my experience, going back to the book, say the second or the third or even the fourth time, as I've done with quite a few books actually, it's like you see so much, I see so much more in the book. Like I was reading some of it this morning and thinking again, wow, I must have missed that first time,
Yeah.
And there's that sort of, it's almost like, we go through our own evolution to meet the book in a sense. Does that resonate with you? Or?
Yeah, I think so, because everybody that's read the book has their own favourite chapters, and everyone's are different. It's just incredible that there's not really one particular chapter that everybody's saying, oh, that's my favourite. It just doesn't work like that. They're all different. There can be, somebody says they've got 3 favourites, and they're just like, none of them are the same as anyone else's. But then another time, and I've heard this as well, that a couple of people have read it and their favourites have changed as well, as they've carried on reading it, a bit like you just mentioned, that you find different messages within. So I think it's all about where that person is on their own journey and what their lessons are at the time, what they have to learn. That they're the chapters that they prefer.
Yeah. Again, maybe to help people who are watching and not familiar with the book, can you give us maybe a few examples of the contributors and what they're talking about? To give people an idea of what to expect in the book.
Well, Don Miguel Ruiz has a chapter on love, the colours of love, and then Neil Donald Walsh, as you mentioned earlier, his chapter's called Conversations with the Light. And then Julie Chimes has written a great chapter on forgiveness. We have Flowing with the River of Light, which is all about being in the moment really and just flowing. That's Mike Robinson. We have chapters on gratitude, creativity, like preparation, like preparing the body to receive the light, and that's all about Kundalini and Kundalini yoga. I mean, there's 22 in total, but that's just an example of some of the ones that are in there.
Yeah, but the point is, it covers a lot of ground in the sort of under the, let's say, the general umbrella of spirituality.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, it deliberately does that so that there is something for everyone, and that everybody will find their kind of strand of truth within that, which they can then use as their daily exercise, whether it be meditation or the Kundalini yoga, or just doing a gratitude journal every evening. Whatever it is, whatever works for the people.
Licorice all sorts, something for
they
everyone.
Pick, everyone has their one.
Wonderful.
That's it.
Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed the book, and I again, looking at it this morning, and it's interesting you mentioned about favourite chapters. I think first time around I picked out 2 or 3, and now I'd pick out 3 different ones.
Yeah,
so.
that's just the way it goes.
It is the way it goes, isn't it? Absolutely. What would you say is the real value of the book in terms of the future and where we are now as humanity, if you like? I know that sounds like a big question, but I mean, do you foresee? How do you see it sort of fitting into the sort of the general trend, if I can call it that, of sort of people becoming more spiritual and how that might help?
Well, I mean, it's obvious that right now on Earth, more and more people are awakening spiritually. And so this book is really a guide of how to live a more enlightened life. And so really it will just help people as we step into that big change that's going on right now, which, you know, a lot of spiritual people are talking about, this shift in humanity which is starting to happen. You know, I don't know when it's going to happen because it seems to be taking a while, but I suppose at least it is happening, and there are more and more people who are calling themselves light workers, who are here to, obviously at this time on earth, contribute in a way, you know, which is spreading the light and the teachings of the light. And so this book, as you know, it's definitely been guided very clearly from the start, and the people who are involved with it, you know, we've all like come together at this time, and we were all meant to come together at this time. You know, I've mentioned Julie Chimes before, who's been, you know, an incredible mentor to the project, and Terry Tillman as well, who I know you've spoken to. And the three of us together were just so obviously all meant to meet up and do this kind of together as a team.
So it's a wonderful example of co-creation.
Yes, brilliant. Yeah, and it's obviously not just us three, but all the contributors are part of it. So it's like we have this sort of light family that, you know, we've all come together, and I know it's very karmic, and I know that it was definitely all meant to be. It just feels beautiful. Like that, yeah.
Beautiful. In terms of Keidi, what has it meant for you personally?
Well, for me, I mean, I know that there's lots of lessons that, for me, in this book. I mentioned trust and surrender earlier, which are definitely big ones. Patience is another one for me, because I've had to be very patient, you know, throughout the putting together of the book, and even now it's out, I'm having to be patient with its future success, you know, and I do still feel it's going to be fairly large in terms of, it's going to be very successful, you know, in terms of selling copies, the amount of copies sold. So I'm just having to be patient with when that's going to happen. But I had a feeling right from the beginning that it was going to sort of like be a bit slow to begin with, and then suddenly kind of burst into light, I suppose. And I had a dream actually recently, and it was about, you know, the Kundalini energy that's at our at the base of our spine, the serpent energy. But it was, what I was dreaming was this serpent of energy was at the base of the spine of the book. So it was like the book was open, and this serpent of energy was at the base of it, and it started coming up the spine of the book, like fairly slowly, and then all of a sudden, at one point, it just kind of burst up through the whole top of the book and came out the head of the book. You know, and I just, when I woke up, I just realised that it was telling me that this is kind of how the book is going to go in terms of the sales, and that it might be a bit slow to begin with, but then it will just go whoosh.
How important is it to you personally that the book does sell? Because obviously there's the charitable aspect, isn't there?
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't mind me asking, I mean, I've always wondered this about authors. There's this sort of dichotomy between, you know, the sort of, you know, forgive me for saying this, the sort of the ego approach is that I want to be a best-selling author, which is one I've always had, you know, one of my little dreams. And then the other side of it, which, as you say, is to surrender and just, you know, what will be will be. I mean, how have you found that to be a personal challenge? Or?
Well, I think really, you know, this project is all about the charities. That's what it's always been about, and the contributors obviously have played a big role in that as well, to get this book out there. And I've never really seen it something that I've kind of done, because I know it's been so guided, and everybody's really contributed in very equal ways in terms of what they've given. But I mean, obviously it would be nice if it was a best-selling book, because of course that way the charities will make more money, and you know, I've always said from the beginning that the goal is to raise $1 million. And there's just, it's nice to actually meet your goals, if you know what I mean, and actually do what you say you want to do. And so for that, there's, you know, that's more me that wants to meet my goal, you know.
Yeah, okay. Right. So that's not for others, that's for you personally, is that what you're saying?
Well, it's both. It's, you know, I'm doing it for the charities, so it's like that's the selfless service part of my journey right now, but at the same time it is a personal goal as well. It is something that I want to be able to say that I've done and that I've achieved. So maybe, there is a slight kind of ego thing there, but I think that's pretty normal for humans to have. I'm not going to like lie and say that, you know, I don't want to meet my goal
Yeah,
because I do, but it's not really for me, it's for the charities. And that's what my whole thing has been, is that I want to give back, because I feel like I've received a lot in life already, and so now it's just the time to give back something.
Beautiful,
So,
beautiful.
Yeah.
When we last spoke, in the last interview, you talked about, you'd had a dream where a friend or colleague had actually said to you in a cinema or something that the book might actually become a film.
Yeah, I don't know whether he was actually indicating it was that book or not.
Oh, okay.
But he did say that one day, you know, a book will be made into a film. But I'm not sure whether, because I don't see that would really be a film, because unless it was a documentary, or of course,
yes,
that kind of film. But I don't think it couldn't really be a feature film, as in a fiction. You know, that, because it's not that kind of book.
Could be about you putting it together.
I don't think so. It was a funny dream. I'm still in contact with that man who was in the dream. He's a medium. He's very old. He's like 97 now, but he still, you know, receives those messages, the spirit, on a daily basis. So yeah. I think I might be going to see him soon, actually, so I can always ask him if he's had any more insights into that. But this was just a dream that I had, so it's not even like he was actually given that message.
Right. It came to you through a dream.
It came through a dream. A lot of things come through dreams with me. I mean, you know, everybody's different in how they receive information, but I know with me, it's in the dream state that I get most of my guidance.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So I just try and sleep a lot, and then that way I'll have more dreams.
Why not? Excellent. Are there any other books, do you think, that are going to maybe follow on from this, or maybe follow a different direction from you? Or
yes, there's about another 4 or 5 that I have on a list, and they're kind of all progressing equally, so I don't know which yet is going to be the next one out, because again, it's very much to do with what where I'm guided that the next one comes out and when that will happen. But there are 4 or 5 different ones which are in process, and also a couple of children's stories as well, which have spiritual messages. So it's the same thing, and it's about like love and light. You know, that's what the spiritual the underlying theme is of those books as well. So yeah, it's kind of like there's a few of us in the book who are sort of going to be working more together. It seems, you know, it seems that's just the way it's kind of going. And we're going to be helping each other with similar kinds of projects. You know, really more or less books, but different contributors are writing different ones, and that's how it seems to be panning out right now. But you never know from one day to the next. When it comes to the light and living in the light, you don't really know. You know, it can seem like it's going one direction, and then everything can just change, and things can go a completely different direction.
That's wonderful.
So that's just about being open to see what happens. The
Always
surrender again.
Surrender again.
Yeah. Comes back to that.
So tell us maybe a little bit about the charitable side of things, and how, not so much how that's going, but how you foresee that sort of panning out.
Well, I sometimes just imagine, you know, handing over that big cheque to to the charities, because I think that just sort of helps with the, you know, the whole law of attraction stuff and visualising. They say to do that. But I mean, obviously, as of now, we haven't handed out any big cheques. With our first payment to the charities, we're hoping will happen at the end of this year. We still do have some costs to pay back for the book. You know, for getting the book out there. There were quite a number of costs, like printing, and there's monthly fulfilment costs, storage costs. There's a lot of costs actually, which really, when you're putting the book together, you don't really think about initially. But and then actually we've nearly run out of our first print run, so then we have to get a new print run. Because we only got 2,000 books printed to begin with, because we obviously weren't sure how it was going to go, and obviously for cash flow reasons as well, we didn't know. So.
Do you have any advice for like an author maybe in a similar situation to your own, someone who's thinking about writing a spiritual book? It doesn't have to be like The Light, it could be their own experience or their own story with with a spiritual message, if you like. doesn't even have to be a spiritual message. I mean,
Yeah.
based on your experience, what would you say to people out there who are, would like to be a Keidi Keating?
Would like to be an author of any
Yeah.
book.
Well,
really.
not so much any book, sticking to more or less the
Spiritual
spiritual
themes.
theme.
Yeah.
I mean, how easy or how, I mean, I know it's a cliche, but how easy or difficult have you found it to sort of...
Well, I'd done other books before this one,
Right.
and I'd been a book editor for some time as well. So for me, it was probably slightly easier, perhaps for that reason, because I'd seen so many books, and I was able to really sort of get a sense of what worked and what didn't. Having said that, the book did change a lot as well throughout its journey, and I think that's just something that many authors have to face. Is that it's not always going to be perfect in the first write by any means, and a lot of times it might change 4 or 5 times before you've got your final book. And if it comes to writing a spiritual book, I'd say to just really be true to yourself and really kind of, don't worry about what other people are going to think. As long as you're being true, and as long as these things that you've spoke about or written about in your book really happened, then I think it's great. People want to know individual stories. I know like the chapters in The Light, a lot of people do prefer the ones that do have a personal edge to them. Any of those chapters, definitely we have received feedback that people have preferred those ones.
Yeah, the personal story.
Yeah, so that's just like a good advice, I think, to just add that personal element to the book, for sure.
Gives the author's energy.
Yes.
Puts the author's energy into the book, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the other thing is just to do some exercise. Put some exercises in it that people are able to do.
Yeah.
As well. Rather than just read the book and then they sort of forget about it, really.
Yeah, so they're practical.
Yeah, the things that they can apply in their life.
Yeah.
They'd be the main things. I could probably list a number of others, but I think that's probably enough for now.
Okay, well, what is during the course of producing the book, during the course of putting it all together, are there any sort of funny or joyful stories you can share with us as to how things maybe took a different turn that you weren't expecting, and it went along perhaps an even better path than you thought it was?
Yeah,
anything like that?
That did happen, mainly when it came to some of the contributors that were in the book, and there was this one man who I wanted to be in the book from the very beginning, and I added him to my list of wannabe contributors, ones that I would have liked to have been in the book.
Yeah.
And he did say yes at one point, that he was going to be in it, but then unfortunately his schedule got too busy, and he had to withdraw for from some projects he was involved in, and so one of them was The Light that he came out of, and I was very upset at this point, because at one point I thought this man was going to be in the book, and then suddenly he wasn't anymore, and I was quite disheartened at that time. However, then magic just started to happen. It was incredible.
Go on.
Because after that, both of the sort of more well-known authors who are in the book, Neil Donald Walsh and Don Miguel Ruiz, they since came. But then they wouldn't have been that space for them had the other man not have pulled out. And so it was all perfect, and it was all very much just exact. I can see now that it was almost like if he hadn't have come out, they wouldn't have come in. That's how it went. It was just also, and they were a better match for the book anyway, in terms of the fact that they're more spiritual authors, and they're known for being that.
Yes, so wonderful synchronicity. Really.
Yeah.
Wonderful, yeah.
Yeah, well, that happened on quite a few occasions, actually.
Well, give us another one.
Well, it's the same thing. I mean, the same thing with contributors
people being
coming
replaced
out,
by,
people being replaced. It just sort of had to go that way. I think in the end we had to take out 14 contributors in total, and a couple, like I said, did come out because they were too busy to continue.
Yeah.
Other ones we just literally had to say to them, your chapter's not really a fit anymore for the way the book's developing,
right.
So we can't include it any longer, which was really tough for me, because I don't like to let people down or feel like I'm letting people down. And of course I wasn't. I was just doing what had to be done in order to make the book as it currently is. It just changed a lot throughout the course of putting it together, and that's what I mean about The Light. And when you sort of live in that space, you never know what's going to happen from one day to the next, and the changes that can just happen very spontaneously. So you think you're going in one direction, and all of a sudden you can be going in a whole different direction.
just like life.
Yeah, that's it, exactly, that's it.
Yeah, what a great metaphor, isn't it? Yeah,
and it's the same when it came to the book. And I think that books that are more spiritually guided, that probably does happen a bit more. So yeah, and with The Light, I just have a feeling that it's going to be one of those books where it's not really going to have a life, a shelf life. You know, like some books, they come out and they're only really maybe popular for a year or something. I do think The Light might be a bit like a Course in Miracles, or you know, one of those books where it becomes a reference book for people interested in spirituality, that they can, you know, just always knows around. And
it's interesting you say that, because I was thinking that very same thing this morning.
Oh really?
I was thinking this would make a great reference book, you know.
Yeah, that's what quite a few people have said that, so we're bearing that in mind. And
given the amount of, you know, it does cover a lot of ground, doesn't it?
It does,
a lot of ground.
yeah.
And, you know, so, I mean, many things.
Well, I think we were wondering about maybe adding the subtitle to the next print run of How to Live an Enlightened Life. So at the moment we have a book of wisdom underneath. A few people have just mentioned that they're still not sure maybe what it is, you know? What
wisdom is, yes.
Yeah, that's it. They're wondering what kind of wisdom. So we thought, well, if we add the subtitle How to Live an Enlightened Life, that tells people exactly what they can expect from it. So that's just something that might appear on the next one.
Oh, that's great. So yeah, like everything in life, there's a process of change, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and that's exactly what happened with the book, and I would say it would happen to anyone probably that's bringing out a book. You know, because I've got a few author friends as well, and they say the same thing with their books, that they've gone through the same, like a metamorphosis almost. It could be that the whole subject changes. That they only really receive that insight once they've got to a certain point in the book. You know, otherwise they wouldn't have reached that decision. So
yeah, that's a nice example maybe of how not to sort of hang on to something and say, this is my story or this is my subject matter.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and to be open to what comes.
Because it can change.
yeah, wonderful. Is there anything, Keidi, that, you know, that you'd like to share in terms of the sort of the lessons or the sort of learnings that you've taken from the book? I mean, we've talked briefly about some of your personal challenges, but is there something that, you know, how would I put it? That something that you know now that you didn't know before, which is like something which has been a sort of very valuable for you personally? Is there something that you can share along those lines?
Well, there's quite a lot really, because one of the books that, you know, I'm looking at bringing out in the future is called Teachings from the Light, and that one is literally the things I learned on the way. Great. Because I noted them all down. You know, everything that happened of any significance, I made a note of it and I wrote the lesson that I learned. And I mean, I'll give you one example now. I mean, there's several really, but there's just one that I'm kind of remembering right now because it was quite a potent lesson, I think. And that was that I was meant to be flying from Spain to the UK one time, and I was literally only there one day, and the reason that I was in the UK was to open a bank account for the Light, you know, specifically for the Light network. And the plane was cancelled. So obviously I couldn't go. I had to completely reschedule the trip for another time. But when I was at the airport that day, and to begin with, they didn't actually say it was cancelled. They just said, like, you know, you might be able to fly. We might be able to fly in 3 hours if the technician fixes the plane. So we were all hanging around there, and you know, usually in that circumstances you start to feel a bit annoyed and frustrated and like, oh God, why is this happening? But I just, because I was in the process of doing the Light and I was learning about surrender and trust and all those things, I just didn't let it bother me, you know, and I just sort of sat and thought, oh well, you know, this is all perfect. And I know it is, and I could see other people there, other passengers, like ranting to the staff and getting really irate, and I would just look at them and think, that's not going to solve anything, you're still not going to be able to go anywhere. Anyway, during this time, I met this group of rock climbers, these really nice men, you know, as a group of 4 of them, and I just had a really nice night with them because we all stayed in a hotel that night. You know, all of the passengers of the plane were put up in a hotel in Spain, and I became very good friends with these men, and it was just a really lovely night. And I hadn't like let my hair down like that. for quite some time, because I was, you know, so busy with putting the light together, and I just had probably the most fun I've had in ages, just being with them. And so it was just such, it was just reinforcing that lesson that, you know, everything is just so perfect. You know, even when it's like something that you might seemingly be negative, really, there's never anything that negative, and there's always something amazing that will happen. And so that I really needed that night, and I didn't realise how much I needed to have that experience of just kind of being free and feeling free, and it was so nice. You know, we all just like sat around, had dinner together, and just talking, and you know, they were very interested in the book and everything that I was doing, and I was interested in their rock climbing, and so it was just nice. And they were all strangers, but at the end of it I felt like I'd known them for quite some time. And you know, I'm still in contact with them now on Facebook, and you know, probably we'll see them again sometime. So
oh, wonderful!
Yeah,
what a
it was just
story.
and in the end, of course, I went back the next week, and everything was perfect then in terms of opening the bank account, and you know, it all went brilliantly
all
then.
Fell into place.
Yeah, all fell into place. But so it just taught me. It was just reinforcing really that lesson of just kind of let go of any perception about how things should be.
Tell us about the Spread the Light campaign. How is that going, and where is it going?
Yeah, well, the Spread the Light campaign is a fundraising platform where, you know, people are able to donate money to the 1 Million Goal Fund without necessarily buying the book. However, they could do it also by buying the book. And I think there's just been a bit of confusion about what the Spread the Light campaign is. So really it's just like somebody would donate money to any charity. It's just a way of people doing that. But if people buy a book, then they know that
some of the proceeds
according to which method they buy it through. Like if they buy it from Amazon, not so much is going to come to the charities. If they buy it direct from us, more will come to the charities. But really that's what the Spread the Light campaign is, and so any monies that come into that will be dispersed to the 7 charities, you know, minus any costs that we have, which we've still got some costs that we'll be having to wait until we can then, you know, start really building up the fundraising money. But yeah, it's but people can go on. There's a website. It's just called spreadthelightcampaign.com. So people are able to, you know, log on to that, and it tells people a bit more on there about what it is.
Right.
But it's
so people don't have to buy the book basically to contribute to the charities. That's the bottom line.
Yes, if they wanted to just like donate some money to the actual campaign itself, then they're able to do that. And but also on the Spread the Light campaign website, it's not just about money actually, it's also about just people, if they're able to just help spread the message of the book, like let people know it's out somehow.
Yes.
Even if it's just telling a few friends, or if they've got a book club they belong to, they're able to maybe suggest it as one of the books for that week. There's lots of different things people could do to help that doesn't involve actually parting with any money as such. Like you're doing here and interviewing me.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing, you know, just helping to spread the message of the book.
Yeah,
So,
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And what a great message as well. I'm sure.
Yeah.
You know, it really is. The content of the book is fantastic. I mean, maybe I'm slightly biased, but I mean, it is very much my sort of, you know, subject matter, as you know.
Yeah.
But I think there is, I mean, I do believe that. I mean, I've read a lot of books, and I think there are a lot of books that I wouldn't necessarily recommend on a general basis, simply because I think people have to be at a certain level, a certain readiness, if you like. I mean, I don't want to make this sound, you know, sort of arrogant or anything, but it's like there is, I think, that element. Whereas I think with your book, because you've got 22 different contributors coming from, if you like, 22 different levels in a sense, 22 different vibrations, you might say, 22 different levels of light, similar energies, of course. Then, you know, there is something there, isn't there?
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, you know, it's not really a book, like you said, it's for different kind of people that on different stages of their journey. It's not, rather than sort of different levels, I think it's more, you know, everybody's at their own place, and that place is just perfect for them at that time. And there's always going to be something that anyone will get from it, and it might just be even one sentence of the book that could completely change someone's life. You know, and others might get a lot from all different chapters.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
Wonderful. Excellent, Keidi. Keidi, we're coming close to the end. What is is there something, a final message or something you'd like to add to what you've said, maybe to reinforce, you know, the message of the light, or some personal, you know, something more personal that you'd like to share about that people can take away and think, you know, that's another, that's helpful, you know.
Let me think about that. I mean, I've just like covered quite a bit about what's going on for me right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, the surrendering and the trusting is really, I think, just my main lesson right now. And I know the viewers of this will all have their own different things, but that's really what I'm kind of dealing with right now, is just the trust and the surrender. And it's happening with me a lot in all areas of my life right now, where I'm just not allowed to know what's happening next. You know, I'm not allowed to plan my life right now.
How does that feel?
Part of it feels a bit scary because, of course, I've been so used to planning things. I'm a bit of a planner, and so suddenly not being able to, I just feel it just feels like I'm a bit outside my comfort zone right now. But I also know that it is, you know, it is all going to be fine. I do know that deep down, and sometimes I just have to remind myself. So I think that's really what I'd just like to share with everyone listening, is that, you know, it will always work out exactly how it's meant to. Even if you're in a part of your journey where it feels at the moment where, you know, you don't feel like it is going the right direction, it always is. Even if well, that's a great message, isn't it, for people to trust that it is. Yes. That everything is working out perfectly, even if it appears in the heat of the moment that it's not. And I mean, I'm just saying that because that's where I am right now, and so that's really what's in my mind to share. But there's so many different things that I could share. Yeah. Well, is there anything else that's sort of there on the tip of the tongue, or? That's the main one in my awareness right now. And I mean, you know, of my signs that I get with the butterflies and the numbers and things. You know, that's just another thing, like looking out for the signs, and you know, that's just the comfort part of it for me. So when you're in that state of angst, just knowing, then you see the sign, you know that really everything's okay. And I mean, I'll just give you a quick example of that. It was like when I was at the US Embassy the other day, I had to go to try and get a visa, because I want to go for 6 months in May. Right. And again, I don't still know how long I can go for until I actually arrive at security at the airport. But when I was called, my number was called out, my number was 333. And that 333 has been like my number throughout the whole project of the light. And so again, in that moment, I did feel slightly anxious about, am I going to be able to get in for 6 months? But when I got the number 333, I just instantly felt better, because again, I just knew that was my sign that everything's just going, you know, exactly as it should be. So wonderful. That's So is the plan to go? Forgive me if you use the word plan, but is I can't plan. Is the intention to go to the States to promote the book, or is this something different? No, really, it's there's more opportunities in America to promote the book. I think that's the thing. I see. I mean, even when it comes to networking and things like that, there's always greater opportunities there because of the kind of crowds and the people being more interested in spiritual subjects, I think, the openness of the people. So really, yes, it is to promote the book, but it's not like I've got tons of interviews and things lined up. I have a couple lined up, but it's not like that. It's just that I know that that's the place that I should really be right now. That's the place it feels that I should be anyway. If the light decides something different, then I'll go wherever, you know, it leads me. But right now it looks like it's going to be in the US. Fantastic. Thanks very much, Keidi. I love your openness and your authenticity. I think it's wonderful, and you know, the way you speak of truth is fantastic. And you know, what can I say? As I said before, tremendous luck with it all, and I really do hope you achieve your goal. And even if you don't, you know, I think what you've done is absolutely fantastic, and the book will always be, you know, very close to my heart, you know. Thank you. That's so nice. Because it really is, you know, I think it really is one of those books that you can go back to, and there's an answer there if it's not already in here. So beautiful. Well, thank you for having me. You're welcome. Thanks, Keidi. Thanks very much. And thanks again to everyone for watching and listening.
Thanks again to Keidi, and yeah, join me again for the next Sharing Your Passion.